Hey guys, this is Chris, and on this installment of Sci-Fi Review, I'm going to talk about Devs Season 1. Stay tuned. So Devs, D-E-V-S, is a show that was on FX, and then it was on like FX on Hulu. I don't know if it was actually on FX or not. I saw it on FX on Hulu. It's from the brain of Alex Garland, who was the guy who did Ex Machina, if you remember that movie. Let me just say this show is pretty amazing. So let's summarize what went on here. So you've got two characters, Lily and Sergey. Now both of them work for this big tech corporation called Amaya, which their headquarters is, someplace out in Southern California, of course, with this big huge statue of this little girl. Now we come to find out this statue is the founder's name is Forrest, by Nick Offerman. Excellent job in that role, by the way. That's his daughter, who died along with his wife in a car accident several years ago, and that's kind of his monument, whatever, to him. But Sergey gets promoted to Devs. Now turns out Sergey is a Russian industrial espionage agent whose sole purpose was to infiltrate Devs and steal some code, which he does, and then he gets caught. Of course, can't have that. This is, super top secret stuff they're working on in Devs. I mean, there's this whole thing where it's like this separate building now on this campus that's this really creepy monolithic looking building that has this center core that's surrounded by this big air gap, vacuum gap thing that you can only get to with basically an airlock in this levitating box. And kind of interesting to watch, to see that vision of that place unfold, and kind of nothing but the actual workers go in and out. Nothing. He tries to get some watch, and he takes little spy pictures of his screen or whatever, but they bust him and they kill him. I mean, and then they cover that up. So Lily doesn't believe the story because there's a few things that just don't make sense. They eventually find out, her and her ex-boyfriend Jamie uncover that yes, there is in fact a cover up here involving the head of security, and it goes all the way up to Forrest, of course, involving Russian agents. There's some CIA involvement down the road. There's a bunch of other espionage type of thing. That whole story goes on. In the meantime, inside Devs, and this is the interesting part to me, not so much the whole mystery detective story thing going on outside with Lily and Jamie and head of security Kenton and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty good TV in its own right. But when we get inside Devs, we find out what they're actually doing. You've got Katie, who was kind of in charge of Devs, second command in charge of Devs from Forrest, who's also Forrest's main squeeze, and she kind of she runs the show in there. I just said that, didn't I? Kind of redundant, but what they're doing there in Devs is using some weird this is where it gets a little woo, but they're working on some sort of quantum thing that lets them take this present moment, reconstruct the past from this modeled present moment. Apparently they can model like every particle in the universe. I don't know if Heisenberg has anything to say about that or not. Apparently they get around this with some I don't know, there's some thing where this kid uses this multiverse theory to populate the model and come up with the future, which also then allows them to go back in the past and literally watch what happened in the past anywhere at any time. So they're watching crucifixion and Jesus, they're watching other moments in history, they're looking at actual dinosaurs, this type of stuff. But then this breakthrough that this kid has, which Forrest does not agree with and fires him because it is a certain element of randomness that he doesn't want, because the whole purpose of this Devs project to reconstruct the past and get into the future is to, I don't want to use the word resurrect, but reconstruct his daughter. That's the maybe in his to reconstruct his daughter, and it's a little creepy because that's his sole mission, and everybody kind of knows it, but they don't. But when they get this thing that predicts the future, they see Lily show up at Devs at some point in the future, and then they can't see past that point. So it's like, okay, they, one thing leads to another. Lily learns of this and goes, well, I'll just choose not to go there. Of course, all this while we start to dive into things like, predestination, free will, the whole multiverse thing. It's, in alternate universes, all these things have already happened or will happen, won't happen in the past. There's infinite versions of the past, infinite versions of the future, blah, 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 whatever. All this weird quantum stuff that, we don't talk about. Lily, inevitably can't avoid fate here. And then there's some talk about, well, maybe this is all just a big simulation. And that actually makes sense. And this is where, well, we'll talk about that at the very end. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, can't avoid it. She shows up, learns about this, basically watches herself do this stuff like 2 minutes in the future and can't avoid it. It just happens. The final ending, I'm not going to spoil because that would be just mean. Let's just say it didn't exactly work out like they thought it was going to, but basically did. Well, like I said, they leave it open with that, whole thing about maybe we're in a simulation, and if we can reconstruct everything past and future, everything is already predetermined. This is like already in a package here, so this package could be, very well be, what are we? Are we just code in this string of things that happen? Maybe we're just in a simulation, blah, blah. This is where I think if they wanted to, they could dredge that up and make a season 2. There's no information on a season 2. I don't know. But this show is just, number one, it's just gorgeous to watch. I'm sorry, every frame of this show, not every frame, but most of these, there's a lot of shots in there where you just sit back and go, damn, that's gorgeous, man. And Alex Garland, he, like I said, writes, produces, directs this, and some people might call it pretentious, being his little brainchild and he's doing everything on it. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I kind of like it when people have complete control from top to bottom like that. And this is the case of where it worked out. It's also very serious. There's like no comedy. There may be a couple of little darkly comic moments here and there, but it's always very somber. The soundtrack reinforces that very much so. The soundtrack uses some songs that like blend in with the theme of an episode or something very well too, if you pay attention to. I think I had the subtitles running the entire time just because on Hulu we'd done that and I just was lazy and didn't want to turn it off. Fine, whatever. Sometimes you see things like the lyrics to the song and it's like, oh, I see what's going on there. That's pretty cool. But like I said, this whole thing is absolutely one of the best series I've seen in the serious, I'm doing that thing again, serious, sci-fi genre. I say that, it's, it's like I said, it's serious and somber, and it's not comic book explosions and laser beams and all that stuff. This is examining predestination and free will and a whole lot of philosophical stuff going on here. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to touch on it all. So if you're into that sort of thing, I highly recommend watching this. I'm going to give this a 4.1. Could have gone higher. I didn't, because basically I wanted more out of it. I was hoping for more, but it just, I don't know. 4.1, still pretty good. You can watch this, good. I highly recommend it. This has been Sci-Fi Review.